This is Fantasy Football Today from CBSSports.com.
And you need some help with your lineup in Fantasy Week 15? We'll tell you who to start and sit at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Welcome, everybody. This is Fantasy Football Today, an exclusive presentation for CBS Local Sports. And I'm Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard. Let's kick it off with the quarterbacks, Jamie. Andrew Luck, big week last week. Can he keep it up?
I think he can. 40 fantasy points last week. He's not going to be that good, but he's probably going to be over 20 fantasy points for what should be the second time in a row, and the second time really that he's had consecutive games with 20 fantasy points since Reggie Wayne went down. The last time he faced the Texans, it was the first time that they played without Reggie Wayne. He had 30 fantasy points in that game, and that was with T.Y. Hilton catching 3 touchdowns. Well, T.Y. Hilton's been struggling since then, but I think you could see Hilton, Colby Fleener, and now Derrick Rodgers and maybe Levon Brazil stepping up their game and helping Andrew Luck perform. I think he bounces back as a top 12 cornerback for the second week in a row. Plays another good game. I like him this week.
Dave, Rob Gronkowski is out for the Patriots. Tom Brady's at the Dolphins. They've been pretty good against quarterbacks this year. Starter sit Tom Brady.
Yeah, I'm trying to get away from Tom Brady if I can in my fantasy leagues. And you look at how he did without Gronk for the first 6 weeks of the season. One game with over 20 fantasy points, and a couple were close, a couple were at 19. I think that might be a ceiling for him in this game. And yeah, the Dolphins just gave a bunch of points to Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers last week. They're coming home. It's an important game for them for their playoff implications. I think they're going to play really tough against the Patriots, and you're taking away Tom Brady's best weapon. They don't have a good replacement for him. Plain and simple. Shane Vereen's not going to do enough to help him. Julian Edelman's not going to do enough to help him. I think you look at Tom Brady and you go in another direction at quarterback.
Now, Shane Vereen might not do enough to help Brady, but he will do enough to help Shane Vereen. He's a start this week.
I think you got to buy into Shane Vereen, and I think even as Dave mentioned, Tom Brady could struggle. I still think Shane Vereen's going to have an opportunity to shine because what we've seen from him since he's come back from the wrist injury is a very productive player. And he's only getting better as he gets more familiar with the way that he should be playing in this offense, and as his legs get underneath him and he stops dropping the ball. That's been the big key early in his first couple games back, but now we're seeing him be a viable receiver. If there is going to be a Rob Gronkowski replacement, it is Shane Vereen. And I think you can buy into him as really a number 1 running back this week, certainly number 2, definite starter in PPR leagues, and should be a must-start guy in standard formats as well. The last time that the Dolphins and the Patriots met, Patriots ran down their throats. Who's the running back right now that you can trust for the Patriots? Well, it's not Stephen Ridley. It's barely LeGarrette Blount. It's definitely Shane Vereen. You start him this week.
Now we look at a sit running back, Dave, and Ray Rice. Tough matchup at Detroit.
Yeah, and last week, the Lions allowed 3
Doesn't count.
touchdowns.
Doesn't count.
No, it almost doesn't count. They didn't allow a rushing touchdown in the 8 previous games before then. That offensive line is a wreck for Baltimore. They're not going to be able to block effectively for Ray Rice. They weren't able to do it in many of his other games, including last week against Minnesota. That run defense is a joke compared to this Lions run defense. I think Ray Rice is an easy sit this week.
All right, wide receivers to focus on here. 1 to start and 1 to sit. Roddy White, Dave, we're starting him.
Lots of targets the last couple of weeks, and I think this is the perfect opponent for the Atlanta Falcons. And listen, Falcons, Redskins, that's the game. It's at the Georgia Dome. 2 teams that are going nowhere. But one of the teams is circling the drain, and they're going to have a whole regime change. That's the Washington Redskins. The Falcons are going to keep their coaching staff together. They've got a lot to play for in terms of pride, and they have been getting beat up by a lot of opponents this season. Here's their chance to kick a little butt, and I think they're going to do it at the Redskins' expense. I think Matt Ryan has a big game, and if he's going to have a big game, you've got to look at his top target the past couple of weeks. It's been Roddy White. He looks good. He's somebody I would start.
Same team, same position, different advice. We're sitting Harry Douglas.
Yeah, I think Dave hit it on the head. The guy that he's been going to in terms of Matt Ryan has been Roddy White and still Tony Gonzalez. And Douglas will certainly get his targets, but he's more of a number 3 receiver at this point than a must-start guy. And I think you're looking at the way Harry Douglas has been playing. The touchdowns haven't been there. Now, I know 2 weeks ago he had a touchdown called back, but he didn't get it. And so you have to buy into what the stats are right now. And I think you look at where Harry Douglas is, he's 3rd in the pecking order on a team that, as much I like Roddy White too, and I think Matt Ryan has a good game, but the Falcons can run the ball this week. And so if we're taking away some of their passing production with Steven Jackson playing well, that's the guy who comes at his expense in terms of Douglas. So it's not that it's necessarily a bad matchup, and I think if you're starting 3 wide receivers, he should be one of those 3, depending on what your team looks like, but he's not a must-start guy.
How about a look at the tight ends here? Charles Clay coming off a nice performance. And, Dave, we're going to keep him in our lineups. We're going to start Charles Clay against New England.
Love him this week. The Patriots have allowed 4 touchdowns to tight ends in their last 4 games. They've struggled against the position. And Charles Clay averaging about 9 targets per game over his last 5. I think he keeps up being a factor in this offense. A lot of defenses are going to look at Mike Wallace. They're going to try and take him away. Brian Hartline has stepped up in the last couple of weeks. It's hard to keep tabs on Charles Clay because the Dolphins move him around. He plays a lot and gets That's a lot of activity in that offense. I think the numbers are going to follow.
And it seems like the Bears can throw and throw and throw, and these receivers can do so well, and Matt Forte can catch passes, but no matter what, Martellus Bennett is still not worth starting in fantasy.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup for him. You know, the Browns have only allowed 2 tight ends to get double digits in fantasy points on the season, and Bennett has only had 1 game with double digits in fantasy points since week 4. So we're talking about a long span of him not producing and not helping you on a consistent level. And as Adam said, the receiver is getting the job done for the Bears. Josh McCown or Jay Cutler, whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for Chicago, looking at those 2 outside guys, and rightfully so. They've been playing great. So Bennett just getting lost in the shuffle, more of a possession-type receiver at this point, not necessarily somebody you should consider a must-start tight end. I think you're talking about guys like Dennis Pitta, Jacob Tamme. These guys have better opportunities than somebody like Bennett right now.
All right, we've got more advice for you on the website, all of our written content, of course, our rankings as well. And then on Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Fantasy Football Today with Dave, Jamie, Jason Horowitz, and Chad Johnson. We wrap up everything with an 8 p.m. show Eastern Time on Sunday night. This has been an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. For Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg, I'm Adam Azer. Good luck in Week 15. Go get a playoff win.